What is up, down, and sideways, you beautiful individuals? It is another episode of the Unlock Eric Mark here with you fine folks to get even more hyped for the Midseason Invitational 2025 by looking back at both ends of the game length spectrum. We're talking shortest games and longest games in the history of MSI, and unfortunately for LTA fans, there's definitely some painful memories within here.
Some healthy appearances for the LTA, LCS, of course. Yes, on a list like this, but hang on there, LTA, LCS fans. It's on both ends of the spectrum for this list. You're going to find yourself on the good and the bad of a list like this, but it's a fun one because I'm pretty sure, like ourselves, if you're any sort of veteran within this game, you have filed away a lot of these moments in that back, file cabinet in your brain of these moments. And it'll be nice to have a little refresher, get you a little more excited for some of the high-end action and some of the more dramatic, longer ending games that you do end up seeing at these international events.
It's whether you like your heartbreak quick and fast, over with, or dragged on, where there's little windows of hope before you eventually get soul-crushingly defeated after an extended period. But we'll start with the shortest games. We got the 4 shortest to look at, and that painful memory comes first and foremost with the 4th longest. We're going to Game 3 of the MSI Finals in 2019. G2 versus Team Liquid. Of course, we know this series as a whole set an international record, but it ended with a whimper from Team Liquid, and this is the game where Caps absolutely styles all over Team Liquid on Irelia.
And it's a problem to be dismantled, to be dispatched, to be so outmatched in that final, of course. It's even worse when you examine this third game that you're talking about here, because yes, this really was one of those ones where you got to put up something. You got to show some sort of fight, be able to show that you are deserving of being that challenger on the day on the other side of the rift from G2. But this game 3, this performance from Caps, you just are left by going, is this the gap that's now widening, or was it the LCK and LPL we're watching over here? Because holy moly, Caps put on a show, and G2 are the crowned champion.
Obviously, this is when you're feeling good about Team Liquid after that IG upset. And, I mean, case in point, you look after this game, G2 just wins the MSI title, and initially they're pretty muted. They're, okay, high fives, yeah. When you win a game in 18 minutes, it's not like it was hard fought and you're sweating, you scream and cheer, oh my god, that was close, that was hard fought, guys. It's Caps literally laughing during this game as they finally are able to kill him in like a 3v1 after he dives the turret.
It's one of the clearest examples I've ever seen on the professional stage of it being a solo queue game. Just like anybody else logging on in, and from both sides of it, right? As far as the effort and actual traction that you saw in the game from Team Liquid in the negative side. And then on the positive side for Team Liquid, you were just talking about it. It feels like one of those games that goes by, your team demolishes, dominates, whatever. Lucky that the team doesn't surrender at 15 minutes, but you still close it out before 20. Okay, guys, let's queue up again, because that one didn't feel like a real game. We weren't challenged. We weren't tested. And you could see that on the side of G2. I think there was obviously the exhilaration of being the champions on the day, but there was kind of this vacuum, this, nothing happened type of here thing, expecting the challenge that you showed to Invictus Gaming the series prior. Nothing of that carried over against this G2 squad.
And it was easy to write in Caps as that MVP for this series, based especially on the clinching third game that we saw. Unfortunately, the memories don't get better on this list for the LCS as we now go to the infamous and one of the most recent matches on this list. That is T1 versus FlyQuest from 2024 MSI, clocking in 17 minutes and 34-ish seconds, depending on how you count when the Nexus exactly explodes. This one is hilarious because, number one, they had to play a game after this. This was only game 1 of the best of 3. And number 2, FlyQuest get first blood in this game, and you see Bwipo yucking it up on the Zac top lane, and that's the only kill they get the entire game.
Oh, you could run clips of us doing the show after that game, I'm sure, and it is lighting a fire all around this one. Because I think the biggest problem when you look at this, there still were some expectations. There still was some hope for this FlyQuest squad heading into that matchup. A lot of ideas, a lot of struggles for T1 at this MSI, and people identifying to ban out Faker's champion pool, push them on to unfamiliar champions, all these sorts of strategies. And you saw none of that from FlyQuest, and you saw outside of yucking it up, thinking the series is won after one solo bolo kill, it was nothing for the side of FlyQuest, just a suffocating domination from the side of T1. And this was the very first game of the series. So it was that immediate punch in the mouth, knockout shot to everybody that had been tuning in going, all right, let's see the LTA. Let's see a challenge. Let's see this series. Let's see them throw it down. Nothing in the tank from the FlyQuest boys.
And how do you bounce back for game 2 from this? I think they lose game 2 in like 24 minutes. So that's an improvement, you can say. But obviously, it did feel like this game had an impact on why FlyQuest ends up bowing out early at this event, losing ultimately to PSG Talon in the very next round. The mental went boom when you get smashed in 17 and a half minutes on stage. And unfortunately, this only adds to the worst kind of career resume of Jensen getting absolutely bodied by Faker.
Yeah, it's not a very good look for my guy. It's a classic meme to be bringing out, bodied by Jensen. You know, a little bit of that spray it on. You know,
he got it in his eye.
Good. That's he can't do stuff like that. So yes, that not a good moment. I think for a player that actually, you look through his history, has had some of the bigger breakthroughs for the North American scene on the international stage. This one, and alongside the rest of his FlyQuest teammates, certainly was one of the duds of all time.
At least FlyQuest made it to that 17-minute mark on the Rift against T1, though, because the year prior, the equally infamous 1650 loss, the Mad Lions at the hands of T1. And this is the Mad era where you got Niski in the mid lane, Chasey top, and the wild Karzi Hillisang bot lane. And this one just, it felt almost slow for a 17-minute game, as T1 just didn't even need to get an insane amount of kills. They just kind of slowly rolled this one over. And I mean, across the map, it felt like Owner was completely 16 steps ahead of what Elyoya was doing in the jungle. Zeus, I think, is on Sion, just kind of chilling on this game. It was really Guma. It's not often you're talking about a Jinx getting out of control before the game even hits 17 minutes.
And if it's hitting, if Jinx is out of control before that, never mind 17, throw it down to 25 minutes. If Jinx is out of control at that point, you got problems on the other side of the Rift. More than enough problems on the side of the Mad Lions within that game. I think we can easily come to that conclusion, but for a lot of people, it was that verification, because there were doubts, there were questions about the Mad Lions heading towards this international event. And really, this matchup, this dismantling by T1 was that warning, was that alarm bells going off for a lot of European fans of, this is the nightmare that we thought was going to happen on the international stage, trying to avoid an embarrassment like this one in, again, under 17 minutes, storming on through this one for T1.
And again, this coupled with Mad Lions not making the main stage of the previous MSI, there's a reason there's all these international memes surrounding this squad, because they have the history of not doing that. But yeah, these times are absolutely crazy, man. Sub 17 minutes, you lose a solo queue game in that, it's usually somebody got past the AFK buster and you've been playing 4v5 the whole time.
It really is. And it's again, it's really something where it takes two to tango type of thing here, right? Someone needs to be so overwhelmingly strong, confident, coordinated, and be able to execute on their game plan on the day. And someone needs to be vastly unprepared, under-equipped, unskilled for what is this head-to-heads that we have been talking about. It's an all sorts of mixture with this one. And again, to get under 17, it's a lot of that going on. There were some negatives on the side of the Mad Lions and really a lot of pressure being created by this T1, again, dynasty roster at the time.
But there's something with the T1 mental, because this T1, it's not like they went on to completely dominate and win both of these MSI events against FlyQuest and Mad Lions. They don't even win the event. It's just something when these Western teams match up that they are completely gapped by Faker and the boys. But it's not all positive for T1 on this list, because they are part of the shortest game in the history of MSI, and they are the losing team. Got to go back a few more years. This is the 2019 group stage first matchup against Invictus Gaming. I've seen it fluctuate by a few seconds. We're going on the longer end to clock it in at 16 minutes and 1 second. This is the infamous Jackie Love Draven game, absolutely farming the Sona Tarek bot lane for Teddy and Mata on then SKT.
I'm glad I just kind of rambled on about taking two to tango, two sides of the coin to get these type of results, because that's exactly what it is here, talking about the fastest game in MSI history, because it was a wild, strange type of choice from T1 still, even in the moment, looking back on it. Some signs of picking these type of champions together and when you could within the meta. Certainly not against Jackie Love's Draven. And we are talking about fresh world champion Jackie Love at this point. And again, the Draven, the champion that he is known, was the one trick of before Type of 1, and rolling that into as limp a bottom lane as Sona Tarek was at the time, and having as strong a bully as Jackie Love is able to utilize that Draven. Done and over. And I am actually impressed that it gets as long as it does, given some of the advantages, given some of these early fights and leads the top esports, Jackie Love specifically, are able to earn for themselves.
And this one, more than any of the other ones we've talked about, really just felt like a scrim game where, the Draven got 2 kills early against this super passive bot lane. Okay, you guys win, we'll remake this one. But it was on stage at an international event. Only a best of 1, thankfully, so there was no real mental boom for T1. They end up getting revenge against IG later on in this tournament. But, man, I've never seen a game snowball so quickly. And SKT was just kind of like, yeah, get me out of this game. You could feel that.
And you could, again, feel the power of what was the reigning world champion in IG at that point when you're looking at this event, and the power that Jackie Love's performance here gives. Very much so different than the FlyQuest one, where it is fortunate that this is only a best of 1. This was an easy, okay, you know what, anomaly, scrim game, wipe it off. We're never going to face a situation like that. We're not going to let that happen type of thing, as opposed to FlyQuest, where you got pumped by T1 in that first game with those hopes and everything else, and you had to get back out there to slug it out in the ring a couple more times with the heavyweight.
It's a bit of a tilter to have to get back on the Rift after a performance like that. There were multiple performances not like that, not complete, getting destroyed sub 18 minutes, but we're going to the longest games, and it's more heartbreak for the LCS. But 5 games to talk about here, and they all come from 2 MSI tournaments, which is maybe a statement on the meta and, of course, the play style of a certain infamous North American brand. Of course, we're going to 2017 MSI Team Solo Mid. The first couple of games are both matchups against G2, which ended up going about 15 minutes and 16 seconds, 15 minutes and 32 seconds. And both of these are a case in point of TSM being absolutely allergic to closing out games. They almost throw the first one by giving up a Baron and Elder to this Nunu pick out of Trick when they were in control for the entire game.
And the Nunu pick did feel like a Disco Nunu's type of solo queue pick at the time, and throughout a large part of this game, as TSM developed that advantage, developed that lead to put themselves in a controlling point to the game, until you have a couple of these mistakes, a couple of these whoopsies, and all of a sudden, the coordination, the power level, the composition on the side of G2 is able to generate that action, able to generate that type of problems, and it isn't a simple closeout anymore. This was a product of the time, certainly as far as the meta goes and where we actually were within League of Legends. This is one of those ones where I think looking back at this game, looking back at some of the other longer games that we're going to talk about, you certainly are saying thank you to Riot, to League of Legends for changing some of the aspects of the game to really accelerate, to really nail home some of these late game advantages, so we're not getting these 40 plus, 50 plus, hell, 55 plus long minute games.
Yeah, and again, obviously 2017 had kind of a yucky slow meta, but it is still TSM having no business and no confidence to close out games. The other G2 matchup is the one where TSM end up winning, but Trick almost has this Lee Sin backdoor to close out the game. G2 were like 2 auto attacks on the Nexus from winning this game. TSM barely holds on, and then the game that's a few minutes longer, we're still at the same event. 3 games, all from the same MSI, is a 53-minute one where TSM is actually clutch, and you think that they have an opportunity to get out of the group stage before they lose this heartbreaking tiebreaker rematch against G2. But you have a great Shen taunt from Hanser to beat their main competitor at the time in Flash Wolves, even though they have a Baron stole it from them earlier.
Don't worry, Flash Wolves gets their revenge, of course. Everyone gets their revenge against the villains of the story in TSM around the clock here. But yes, this was a triumph moment, at least for the LCS at the time, getting this type of result, hanging in there in a matchup like this that did have the weight, did have the importance to win this one for TSM, for the LCS at the time. This was a big one, and one of these ones where you have those big moments from Hanser, the Shen taunts, making sure that you're setting up the teammates in these huge engages. That was a big deal for TSM in this head-to-head against the Flash Wolves.
And I think this is one of the most painful events if you're a fan of North America, because it's such a roller coaster. All these 50-minute games, sometimes TSM came up clutch, sometimes it was heartbreak defeat, but in the end, it's losing a tiebreaker and they do not advance to the semifinals, which is absolutely par for the course for a championship team from the LTA or LCS. But clocking in even longer, we go to the previous year's MSI, which is 2016, and again, it's both of the same teams being involved. It was RNG versus SKT in both of their group stage matches, and the first one is a 54-minute banger that SKT ends up coming back with, even though they were behind in gold, even when they win the game. And this is the infamous Lulu escape from Faker, where he hides around the Wolves just out of vision, and obviously they're piloting an infamous Lulu Lucian comp for Bang.
And I love it because it's one of those infamous moments for me, and one of my earlier moments within the professional scene of League of Legends and tuning in and seeing this type of performance, that knowledge, that presence, that to pull off and to hide like that in the big moment. That was different for me compared to just the overwhelming skill that you had already seen from a player like Faker, from a team like T1. To see some of these extra tricks up the skill book was nice to see throughout this series. And it really is one of those ones where I'm looking at it through the lens of this being a 2016, a world champion T1 roster. That was a world finals that did also have its fair share of very long games being played through. Yes, a product of where you were with the meta and the game at the time, but also just the mental tenacity and fortitude that T1 did have to be able to go through so many of those ones and always come out on top. This is another example of that against RNG.
And that is why they felt like a wall that you could not get through, despite having a gold lead the whole game. did RNG, and even on the number 1 game on this list where we were north, the only MSI game north of 60 minutes was their earlier matchup in the group stage, and this is the one that RNG wins. But because SKT are defending champions, it felt like it was so slow moving for RNG. They were in control the whole game. Xiaohu's getting multiple solo kills on Faker, who to this day, maybe his worst Azir performance on the Rift. 0, 6, and 2 on this one, and SKT are down nearly 10k the entire game, but RNG play it low and slow.
That's an impossible stat line to come through in modern day, looking at Faker and going back and trying to find an Azir performance that messy, that ugly.
And this is peak Faker, 2016.
And filled with that many individual mistakes on that type of level with the champion. Yes, it is going quite a ways back for that one. And I think, unfortunately, not much of a memory Xiaohu can turn back to for some comfort in this, even with all these great individual plays against Faker. Because yes, this is one of those ones where, because it goes so long, it goes over that hour mark, more than 60 minutes, despite the advantages, despite the skilled plays that RNG is making. This is where you feel it is hopeless going up against a T1, because at the end of the day, you're still stepping away and you're going, yes, we won. Yes, we're taking that one in that column, everything else, whatever. But I'm putting two points of doubt in the losing column because of being pushed away, because it took so long against this juggernaut titan that is T1.
And I mean, honestly, having nearly 2 hours of on-stage game time against RNG, you see it all come back when they match up in the semifinals of this MSI, and SKT ends up pretty convincingly taking down RNG, including a perfect game in that series. So it's almost like they were studying their opponent, dragging it out as long as you can. We're just learning, we're just gathering data on RNG, and we're going to come back, use it against them, because the format is so broken that RNG doesn't have an option. They have to match up against SKT, even though there's no world where they would have picked them as the matchup, and that is why we're blessed with updated formats in modern League of Legends. But shortest and longest heartbreak across the board for teams, but that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, absolutely beautiful individuals. Thank you so much for hanging out, and we'll catch you on that flippity flip.